Questions? That's my David story. Yes, sir.
Whose idea was it to create the Barnabas character?
I'll answer that by saying how the script was written first, and then I'll tell you about Barnabas. In terms of that, I mentioned the Josette picture coming to life, and maybe some of you do remember that. It was when we had David trapped in the... long time. It's when we had David trapped in the old house, and for those of you that don't know, and he had a little playmate. The little playmate was a little girl from another century, several centuries. And so the two of them, nobody, of course, sees this. At that time, it was sort of since no adult ever saw this playmate, only David, it could have been his imagination, or it couldn't have been. This was just our beginning. And we never thought of the old house until we went up to Tarrytown to shoot not Schwab, but it's now a public, it's now a national... Lyndhurst. And we happened to see on the property down there another house that was falling to pieces, sort of, but it was still enough together that it was presentable, and we made it credible in terms of our story. So the kid, David, used to go down to the old house to play. And while he was playing down there, and of course, nobody had disturbed the furniture, lots of cobwebs, and Josette's portrait was on the wall, and it was still broken furniture sitting around, but of the 18th century type. And so David found his little playmate, who was a ghost. And then the caretaker of the property, Matthew Morgan, thank you. Matthew Morgan found the kid and was giving him a hard time at any rate, and was closing in on they got trapped in a secret room, God bless secret rooms, and Morgan was closing in on the kids, and Josette's portrait comes to life. And this was the first spook thing, except for the little girl, that the ghostly playmate. But how do we get this kid out of a locked room, and who's going to save it? And so we thought, bang, how about, and we do the ghostly bit. And so we matched her in another set, in a big velour set. Again, we're still black and white. And she glides down a flight of steps, and electronically we keyed her in all at the same time. That's why I said it was really remarkable, the kind of stuff the engineers and all of us did to make it happen. So, down the 50 came. Anyway, Barnabas, the audience loved it. My goodness, we got great mail, and it was really a fun story, and it was nice to do. And after a little bit of that, we tried other things. I don't remember what they were. No, we tried them. We did them, but we began to build a history of the family through the portrait. The Josette's history, then it became possible. Since we started the deal in the past, anyway, Josette was the entree of the past. And one day, we used to sit around to write in the writing. We'd have script meetings, and we'd try and plot out the show for weeks ahead, or at least a week ahead. But we had to have some idea of where we were going. And so we would sit and do day by day, and they were really painful. Dan Curtis was a murderous taskmaster, but a very inventive guy. He was a very visual guy. He liked action, but he liked it to be different. When I use the word car chase, I mean not something that's square, or he liked it to, we got into the ghosts and that sort of thing. And so Barnabas just kind of came out of these talks, and he said, let's try a vampire. And because we created this whole story about Angelique from Martinique, and she was built into the story. We had a whole history. My God, we stayed down in there for years, didn't we? And anyway, that's how Barnabas came. Now, the naming of Barnabas was interesting. We couldn't cast Barnabas, and believe me, we did not cast Barnabas until it must have been 2 or 3 days before it was taken. Now, we had a portrait. We created the whole idea, and I had the idea of what his costume was to look like, and I thought of the ring, Dan was in Europe doing something. I can't remember what it was, but we needed to get this portrait, so I got all gussied up in this suit with the badges and the ring, and I got the idea for the wolf's head cane, and so I posed like this, you know. I got a snapshot of it, and then we gave the snapshot to the scenic artist. He was one very good guy. He was a good portraiture, portrait painter, and he painted everything but the head. So we now have this portrait hanging around with no face on it. My body, but no. And we couldn't find anybody. And one day somebody said, listen, there's a guy that just came back from England, Royal Academy and all this stuff, he's a Canadian. We gotta see him. Great. So he came in, and he was going through a process of having his, of all things, his teeth fixed. He had a bite problem or something. He came in. He was perfect. I mean, he was perfect. Like they answered our prayers. And Dan wasn't there. And well, we had no way to get him there. So this is it. And he said, Jonathan said, well, I'm in the middle of this dentist thing. I'm in the middle of this dentist. Thank you. You just do that now. I'm in the middle of this dentist thing, and should I continue? And as I recall, I said, no. You look marvelous. I mean, for two reasons. One, he really looked great, and the second thing is we didn't want him going to a dentist and suddenly changing from day to day every time he came back from the chair. So he stayed that way, and then we had to name him. I was raised in New York, out in Jackson Heights, and there was the name, and there was a graveyard out there, an old Dutch graveyard in Manoa. And I was looking through a document someday that was listing the names of the graveyards out there, and we were trying names everywhere. It was Barnabas Smith or something. Barnabas, Jesus. I mean, if you think naming a baby or a dog is troublesome, try naming a vampire sometime. And Barnabas was just so perfect. I mean, we had a show of hands, and Barnabas won, and Barnabas' name did come from a tombstone in Flushing, Long Island. Yes.